Before we begin making confidence intervals, we really have to know a little bit more about the kind of distribution we should use in order to make an estimation about a population parameter. And there are two procedures that we follow. One is the z-interval procedure, the other is a t-distribution. How do we know which one to use? Please check your reading, but in summary, if you have a small sample, size less than 15, the z-interval procedure should be the one you use only when the variable under consideration is normally distributed or very close to being so. This needs to be explicitly stated in the problem. If it isn't, then the best advice in this case is to use the t-distribution. Just straight out, that will be your best bet because the t-distribution is designed specifically for distributions in which we don't know whether or not the distribution is normal, or that we know what the population standard deviation is. If it's a moderate size between 15 and 30, the z-interval procedure can be used unless the variable under consideration is far from being normally distributed. Again, unless it's explicitly stated in the problem, then really, if you're under a sample of size 30, the t-distribution is the one that you want. So we'll say that, blanket, there are two conditions that you want to know. Number one, the sample size. If it's under 30, chances are likely that you're going to be using a t-distribution unless you know it's a normal distribution. If it's a large sample of size 30 or more, then the z-interval can be used mostly without restriction. Now there are a few other ideas about using distributions that have outliers. Since none of the ones that we're dealing with we're going to consider the outliers in our case, then we're safe in going with our two conditions. Condition number one, sample size less than 30, check to see if it needs to be distributed. Number two, see if it's a normal distribution. If it isn't and it's under, and we don't, if it isn't or we don't know that it is and it's under size 30, then we should be very safe using the t-distribution instead. Just a quick note on what those two distributions are. A normal distribution, a z-distribution, it looks like our normal distribution curve. That's exactly what a z-distribution is. It deals with critical numbers that are called z-numbers, or standard scores. We've talked about those since Chapter 6. T-distributions consider what happens with the sample size, and they'll change. You'll see that if we get a sample size that's close to 30, the t-distribution curve looks very similar to the z-distribution curve. All z-distribution curves are the same, but t-distributions change depending on the sample size. This green curve would represent a t-distribution for a very small number of a sample size. If your sample size is closer to 30, let's say between 15 and 30, that's represented here in red. Okay, good luck.